basically the ranking is, so in the old 16 model, your ranking is based on academic.
My name is Ingrid Roberson. I'm from Alameda County Office of Education. My area, I'm actually the Director of Research, Assessment, and Accountability. I'm sure right now all of your students are experiencing our next generation assessments. This is
Jamie Morantz. I, of course, am suffering tonight from something or other croaking in my chest. So I will do my best to be loud, which is funny because usually I have the loudest voice on this planet. So this is going to be a fun challenge. So we'll make sure, because we're starting late, that we get through this for you in the time allotted to us tonight. So thank you very much for coming and being here. And so we're going to start by first just sort of talking about, just to give you a little reference, where did the Common Core come from? So first of all, we looked around at our own results in the United States, and we are not very happy. We're not doing really well in many of the different international results that are out there. And that's not what the United States likes, and it's not a very good indicator for future economic growth to have your students not be at the top of these kinds of things. So lots of people got together and said, wow, we need to look at standards that make sense. How come these countries, are better than us? And so we actually looked around. A lot of people have done a lot of research, and so the Common Core standards are actually internationally benchmarked. In other words, we look at how it's taught in other countries that are more successful. They are actually aligned to what we call college and career readiness goals. So they talk to a lot of professors, UCs, MIT, Yale, et cetera, and said, what is it that students need to do to be successful? They did a whole lot of kind of needs assessments of students' skills and saw who actually wanted to graduate college, not just get in. And so they looked at those skills that those students had. And like I said, they did a lot of research on this, and they really looked at what does it look like now to work in a 21st century job? What kinds of skills are kids using? And they tried to package this into something that made sense. So the standards are very skill-based. They're not as content-based as they used to be, especially in literacy. So it doesn't say you must read Macbeth in 11th grade. It says you must learn how to read and do these things with text that's at your level in this grade. So that's a really big difference. It really means that teachers can be more creative with what the content is they choose. So the other thing that I want people to understand is this is not a federal thing. The feds didn't do this. This was the National Association of Governors, the Council of the Chief State School Guys, Torlakson, et cetera, like the California State Departments of Education, as well as they had lots and lots of focus groups with teachers, professors, and other kinds of professionals. So this was done as a sort of consortium, and then they said to people, if you like them, you can adopt them. So it's, again, not some federal mandate. So when you look at the standards, you say, well, how are they really different? What is different? And so one of the things that the standards did really well is they talked about rigor. They defined it for us. And so we're going to talk about that for a second. In the old days, they just said, well, if things are hard, they must be really rigorous. Hard is not the same. So how do we define rigor and really clever and complex skill sets in this day and age? So we talk about something called depth of knowledge. It's a framework that slices the pie of rigor, academic rigor, cognitive rigor, in 4 slices. And they are not about difficulty. So depth of knowledge is really about complexity of thought, steps you have to go through to get to something, and how deeply you have to really know the content to answer a question. So tonight you'll get to kind of see what this looks like. And when I say it's not about difficulty, assessors, as Ingrid will tell you, because she's an assessment queen, difficulty is really just about how many people get a question right. So when I say to you, what's 2 plus 2? Or I say to you, how much is, well, you can't see it, that's funny, like 55,338 plus 3,289. An assessor will tell you that second question is more difficult because more people will get it wrong. simply because there's more steps, there's more chances to make a mistake. But cognitively, in other words, what goes on in your mind to do those two things are identical. It's kind of like the idea of doing the two-step, like someone showing you this dance, and someone teaching you the Macarena. Like you're still just memorizing steps and doing them, whether you do the same thing over and over again, or you do it one time. Cognitively, that's what difficulty is, in this instance, is not about. So it's not about, well, since everyone got that question wrong, it's a rigorous question. No, it just was very difficult. And doesn't necessarily mean it's rigorous. For example, you could have a question with a word in it that no one knew what that word meant. Everyone got it wrong. But that's not necessarily rigorous. It just means I have a vocabulary problem with that word. So verbs also are no longer about DOK. And the reason that I say this, oh, by the way, you just learned a new educational acronym, DOK. You can sound really knowledgeable. And why I say this is because for years we used something called Bloom's taxonomy. Is anyone familiar with that? Teachers know that. And there's these verbs. And so the verb would tell you whether it was sort of an understanding kind of question or a more like analytical kind of question. But now we really have to think about what comes after the verb. So when you use this idea, here we have a DOK1. This is a very simple, the bottom of the DOK barrel that we sort of think of as recall. And it says, use your notes to describe 3 characteristics of plant cells. So if I already lectured to you and you've copied them all down, and then I tell you to tell me about them, yeah, exactly. That's not very rigorous. I'm just copying. You've already told it to me, I've memorized it, I go in and I spit it back out at you. Now don't get me wrong. This is still an important skill, right? Memorizing is an important skill. There's lots of things in life that are important to memorize. But we're not saying memorization is cognitively rigorous, okay? 2, describe the difference between plant and animal cells. So again, what I'm saying to you is, if I give you a list of criteria of plant cells, and I give you a list of criteria about animal cells, and then I say to you, student, what's the difference here? What's similar here? Suddenly now, your wheels start to turn a little, right? Is that the same as that? Well, they both have lysosomes, but the lysosomes are really small here, they're really big here. Do they have the same function? I think they're similar. You're now thinking. You're not just regurgitating. So in this sense, things like comparing and contrasting, similarities and differences, what came first, second, third, what's the main idea, who's the protagonist, you have to think a little bit to do that. So how do you use the same verb? Notice, describe, describe, describe. Describe a model to represent a key relationship between plant and animal cells based on their cellular functions. Okay, think about how much you have to know about plant and animal cells now. A lot. And you have to be able to create your own model, how you understand it and what it means to you. In this instance, is there just one right answer? No. As a matter of fact, unless everyone's copying from each other, you hope you have a whole bunch of different models, right? Because what you're looking at here is, what are you thinking? How much do you understand this? What depth do you understand this at? And how can you represent that? How can you communicate that understanding to me? That's a whole lot more stuff than either of those first 2 kinds of questions. And what I'm going to tell you is you will look today at the Smarter Bounce assessment, and they are actually able to assess at that DOK3 level. So it's about cognitive complexity. Do I have to memorize stuff, then use skills, then pull things together? What am I really doing? That's how we slice the rigor pie, right? That's really what it's about. It's all about the task. What am I actually asking a student to do cognitively in this task? And am I making sure to get to that level? Does that make sense? Because you need 1s and you need 2s. Because I need to know, can you add 2 plus 2? Before I can have you try and design my home, or whatever you would do with math, right? So, there you go. Instruction tasks and everything you do with students in a classroom must ultimately reflect the DOK, the level that that set of standards will be assessed at. So you can actually look, there's a blueprint, it says these kinds of things will be assessed at 3 or 4 or 2 or whatever. So as a teacher, you need to build that roadmap so that they can do those same kinds of things on the assessment. And it's not just because of the assessment. If kids can do that kind of work, then they're going to be able to tackle that textbook in college, which they right now really struggle doing. They're going to learn skills to make meaning, and they're going to learn skills to communicate their understanding. All that will help them to be successful, not just in college, but even in your career. Doesn't matter what you do. If you can't do those things, you end up saying, would you like fries with that? So these are the names of them, in case you care. One is recall, remember, reproduce. 2 is where you start to use a basic application of your skills. 3 is that strategic thinking. And 4 is what they call extended thinking. I like to think of this like on steroids. So this would be the ultimate thing you used, the hardest thing you probably did in high school that you remember to this day. Your big term paper, tell me one of the, pick an axis nation and tell me 2 of the most important impacts on it, do some research, come up with your explanations, cite evidence, and don't forget to tell me about the counter arguments. That's a DOK-4. It's not something you do usually in one day. It's usually something that you do over time. It can be a set of experiments. It can be in lots of different ways. So that's what we're trying to get kids to do, to be able to bring things together that they don't normally bring together here. Lots of good cross-curricular opportunities here, etc. So, now I have some examples for you. Identify elements from the periodic table, given facts. You've memorized the facts. There's the table. Pick them out. Distinguish fact from opinion in a text. I've taught you what a fact sounds like. I've given you what opinions sound like. Now I give you a piece of text we've never looked at together. So I haven't already told you which is the fact and the opinion. That just ruins the whole thing. Now you use that skill to do that. Okay? 3, explain the most significant impact of World War II on the U.S. Support your point of view by citing evidence from sources. So now I'm doing research. I'm choosing the most significant impact. Again, we may have 30 kids in a class. They may all choose a slightly different thing that they think is the most important impact. And if they do good research and they explain themselves clearly and they cite their evidence well, then they have a good report. And here's the like I was saying, gather, analyze, organize, interpret information from multiple sources, print and non-print, to write a report that argues your position on, like, homelessness, whatever. Cite evidence from multiple sources, cite and acknowledge competing views. That's like the, right? So this is how we're slicing that pie now. And now I'm going to turn this over, thank God, as I'm about to lose what's left of my little froggy voice, to Ingrid Roberson, who is the fantastic assessment queen. How you going, Ingrid?
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to actually do 3 different things because the PA system is working. So you're going to be seeing me pull 2 of these.
I would like that.
And I think you're going to have to click for me because I'm just not that great. At the CSU system, what we're seeing now is around 50 to 60% of the entering freshmen need some sort of remediation in reading, writing, and math. And now you are the entering class into the community college. So let's say we're going to go to Chabot. And I'm going to ask, since I can't seem to extend all this way. Yeah.
Right about here. Everybody on this side of my arm, sit down.
And what we're seeing at the community college system is around 70 to 80% need some form of remediation in reading, writing, and math. So these are our surviving students, you're the survivors, who need no form of remediation as freshmen who enter their first year. So you can go ahead and sit down, yay to you all. Those are real figures. 2012 came out of Stanford based on a study of several years worth of data, and this is the trend that we're finding. So even if we weren't talking about an international context, even if we weren't talking about a 21st century context, we have a very real situation where our children are going into colleges and universities needing more rigor in what they do by the time they leave high school. And that is what we're trying to do. And so this assessment that we're going to take a look at, the number one claim, the essential claim that it's trying to make is that a student who scores on this at around a 3 or 4, that hasn't yet been determined, is a student who is in fact college ready, college and career ready. That this is a student who can write, who can read, who can do math, who can analyze and critique, and actually tackle those first set of freshman courses with needing no extra support. That's what we're going for in the state and in the country. So this is the idea behind this assessment. So, just so you know, we are in the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortia. These are the states at present that are involved, which we are one of, the governing states. Keep going. The balanced assessment system, just so you know, is very different than what we were used to with the California Standards Test. It is not just a summative test. It has both formative assessments, interim assessments, and end-of-year assessments. So it's an entire assessment system. And the idea being that if children have access to rigorous standards, that by the time they leave high school, they are college and career ready. That's really what we're going for. Keep going. Thank you, Judy. So again, what the assessments are benchmarked to are those standards. And the design of this test is such that it's trying to give meaningful information to both teachers and parents. That's really what all of this pilot test and field test has been about, is to give tools that are really going to help with teaching and learning. And so again, as they leave, that we can actually make the claim that when a child takes this assessment, that we know they're ready. They're ready for that next step. And so as I said, you realize I had all the summative, formative assessments, as well as interim assessments. Interim assessments being tests that they would take in the first quarter, second quarter, first semester, second semester, not just the end of year. And these will also be on the computer. And keep going. Just so you know, what's been happening this year is that in October, AB, Assembly Bill 484, was passed, and it fundamentally transformed our assessment system. It sunsetted STAR, it sunsetted the California Standards Test, the CST, and it wrote into law our new assessments. And what has been happening over the winter and early spring is that there's been a lot of adult learning around these new assessments for teachers as well as for parents. Pleasanton has done, I think, a really wonderful job making sure that parents have opportunities to learn about these new assessments because they are transformative. And then, was I zeroed in on those? Okay. And then what has been happening, you went too fast for that.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you.
Thought I was simple.
Yeah. Is that what has just opened up this week as of April 7th is the field test for the students from 3rd grade through 8th grade, as well as in high school for the 11th graders. And so that is happening right now. We are testing out 20,000 some questions to be able to build this test, a much better test. All right, thank you. So just so you can see the system in action, the idea and part of what happened with Assembly Bill 484 is that the state made a commitment to actually buy the entire system, if the budget allows, and it's looking very good, to buy the entire system for all districts. So every district now will have access to those formative tools, those interim assessments, and of course that end of the year assessment. And this is what it would look like. Hold on, Jamie.
My bad.
It's okay. It's hard when you're carrying 2 mics. So the idea would be is that the interim assessments would happen in the fall and in the winter, and then in the last 12 weeks of the school year is when you have the summative assessment. All right, so enough of talking. Let's move to the next piece. So let's compare the CST and Smarter Balance. How do they compare? You can take a look at our wonderful visual.
Anyone have that iPhone 10 yet?
We're getting there. All right. Okay, so this is where you all need your devices. So let's go ahead and open those up. And you are going to be pointing your browser to to www.starsamplequestions.org. So go ahead, we'll go around and make sure that's popping up on your screens and then keep moving forward.
So yeah, it's all one word, star symbol. Oh, you're having that happy Google Chrome thing, aren't you? Oh, look, you're already like at the smarter. Oh, you.
Okay, so maybe
You're about to take a real test like you're a student. Okay, you're in the secure browser. So hopefully you'll be able to get you in a non-secure browser.
how are we doing on?
I think they're on the
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, a lot of them are on the secure browser.
Yeah,
They found our website.
they were right. They were preset.
Set for the
Okay.
secure browser.
Do you want me just to?
You want us to show one?
I will just model that.
This is a really good question.
Because they were already preset, I'm going to go ahead and model this as best possible, and then we'll get you to the SBAC, the Smarter Balance one. I'm not going to be able to do this.
No, you're good. You're good. It would actually say. Oh, okay.
We're good.
Yeah, you're good.
So if you want to give this a try, go ahead and if you're comfortable with putting this into the browser, please do, but I'm going to actually do this. So where I'm going right now is, Jamie, do I just click out of this?
Yep. Here you come. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay. Is there a Wi-Fi password? So where we're going is to a portal that has been in existence that shows prior CST questions that were in use and that were retired. And so what Jamie's showing you is we're going to go to sample test questions. So if you're actually going to do this with us, this is what the first page looks like, the landing page. Go to sample test questions. Jamie's clicking. We'll stop there for those of you that are going to try to do this with us. All right, you should see this. I have a 5th grader. I'm going to use 5th grade as the way to do this. So select 5th grade.
Or you can select.
You may pick the grade you would like, but it's not going to match what we're showing. I'm going to select English Language Arts and only look at advanced questions. No far below basic, no below basic. You're only looking at what's tagged as the most difficult questions in CST. So advanced. Got it, Jamie?
I got it. You got it? All right.
And hit submit. And what you're going to get is a list of publicly released questions that are advanced questions for 5th graders in English Language Arts. And in this case, there are 23 that you could take a look at. Jamie, I'm going to ask you to pop open one.
Okay. Word analysis, fluency, and something.
All right, so shrink it so you actually see the whole thing. There we go. So, okay, there we go. So, this is for a 5th grader. In CST world, the question is, which of these is a synonym for the word remark? A, B, C, or D? And the answer is comment. 53% of students gave this response.
You are as smart as a 5th grader.
But here's my question for you. If you go back up. Based on what Jamie just said about depth of knowledge, about having to do real rigorous thinking, is this DOK 1, recall, DOK 2, basic application, DOK 3, strategic thinking, DOK 4, extended thinking? And just put on your fingers what you think it is and raise it up. Nice. I see 1s and 2s. So 1.
Why? Either you know it or you don't. There's no context. There's no way for you to figure it out or use anything. You either know it, I can pull it out of my bag of tricks, or I can't.
But wait a minute. Was this a basic question?
No.
What was this? This was an advanced question. So children who got this right were considered the most advanced at 5th grade. This is the high bar with the California Standards Test. Let's show one more and then we're going to move on. So you can go back to the list.
Oh, what do you think?
Yeah.
Library analysis, reading that would be harder, right?
Okay. Okay, let's take a look at that. Click on it.
Drawing.
It's loading.
Dude.
It's loading.
Y'all are hitting it hard.
Yeah. And this is something that you can do at home if you just want to take a look at what did advanced questions look like on the CST way back when. All right, so for a fifth grader, they're reading this lovely story about a winning team. And all the way down, here's the advanced question. What is Billy Hawkins' long-range motive for handing out copies of a magazine article? A, B, C, or D? What are his motives for handing out copies? Now, obviously, you aren't able to read it. Let's take a look at the answer. It was C. What is it? Choose C. 44% of students gave this response. Okay, so a fifth grader had to read those paragraphs and answer that question. DOK, 1, recall reproduction, 2, basic application, 3 is the strategic thinking, 4, extended thinking. What would you give it? Let's just see fingers. 2.
Why? They had to at least be able to read and then figure out what they didn't know what motive meant, right? So there's a little bit of that. And then actually be able to infer, interpret, or understand what that was about. So I would say you're right, they're applying a skill of what's the main idea here, what's a reason for somebody's action. That's all. And they had a choice. So they didn't have to write anything, they didn't have to say what their evidence was, they didn't have to explain why one was better than another. They just had to do that skill application.
Again, this is an advanced question. So what we've been doing for the last dozen years, and it was right for the time of what we were doing, this is what advanced and this is what rigor has been looking like. So now, let's take a look at where we're going. So we're going to do smarter balance now. So, great. I believe most of your devices are all keyed up for it, but we still need to show the website for those that have a personal device. Yeah. I have it on a Word document, so you can close this down, go to the Word document. Yeah, it should be. There you go. Okay, for all of you that aren't already queued up to the Smarter Balance, make sure, because I don't think personal devices are, you're going to want to Google ACOE Core Learning. So go ahead and Google ACOE Core Learning.
All one word.
All one word, no spaces, no caps.
And if you Google that, it should look like this.
Yeah. And what you're going to get, and Jamie, you might have to show them how to.
Yes, I will.
There you go. It should look like this. This is a Symboloo site that we maintain that has all these very cool tech tools.
Right. ACOE Core Learning, and the first site should come up as this Google site.
Right.
Right like that.
These are just for those of you that only have a personal device.
So then you say, well, Jamie, that's really great, a big blank page. Well, some of you have a big blank page right now. And I'll tell you why. Because Google's worried about your safety. So if you go up here, if you go right up here, there'll be a shield that looks like a, medieval shield. Click on the shield. I don't have one, of course, because I already loaded this today. And say load unsafe script. And voila, the symbol will appear.
And Jamie, why don't you go around if there's a need for
No
help?
problem.
For those of you that are going to go in this way, what's going to happen next is you're going to pick this pink tile upper right, and it says SBAC Test Portal. That's for those of you that weren't already queued up for this, because I see a lot of personal devices. You're going to click on SBAC Test Portal, and this is what's going to pop up. So now we should hopefully, I think, be all on the same landing page. So this is what you should be seeing. For the Pleasanton Chromebooks, is it all ready to the sign-in? Okay, if you're on the Pleasanton Chromebook, hold on with us, because I'm getting personal devices there. Personal devices, you're going to go to the practice and training test. So click on that. It's a little bit, so you would have seen this. You're going to pick this pink tile. It says SBAC practice test portal. Click on that, and it's going to bring you to the page. If you're having trouble, Jamie is floating around. From there, you're going to select practice and training tests. And these are the very same things, just so you know, that teachers are going through, that students are going through. We think technology can be just smooth and without trouble sometimes, but this is the very real set of skills that we're using in classrooms as well as patients. So, click on the practice and training test.
Is everybody okay with that so far? Yeah, you're.
And you should see this. Again, if you're having troubles, Jamie will help you. You're going to scroll down, and you're going to pick the student interface. So go ahead and click on the student practice training test. And now, and hit OK. We're OK. Okay, we're OK. We're OK. And this is what you all should be seeing. So we should all be there. If you're not there, you're going to grab Jamie, and Jamie will get you there. So since we are in the actual field test, all of your students that are taking Smarter Balance are going into labs or in their classrooms with cows. These are the carts, the computers on wheels. And when they see Smarter Balance, this is the page that they see. And a student will sign in with their name. They have a state ID, and they are given a session ID. So this is exactly what they will be seeing when they take this test. And then, you all don't have to do this. All you're going to do is sign in. So let's sign in. And now, depending on if you have a 3rd grader, a 5th grader, an 8th grader, 11th grader, go ahead and pick the grade you need to look at. Yes. Hit OK. Yeah. Okay, Jamie, I'll need help over here. Okay, so pick your grade of interest. I will be picking 5th grade again. Hit yes. So yes. And now what you will see are all these lovely tests that you can take. If you want to see a range of questions, then pick the first 2. You can either do math, grades 3 through 5, or ELA, grades 3 through 5. Jamie will be coming around. If you want to see only questions at your child's grade level, then pick the one in the middle that says grade 5 math or grade 5 English language arts. And you will only get questions at that grade level, okay? The last 2, we're not going to go there right now because it's actually only one big question, but we can take a look at that afterwards, okay? And keep your hand up, Jamie will come to you. So what you're going to do is select your test of interest. I will pick grade 5 ELA. What you will come to is a choose settings. And you don't need to make any changes, but this is actually done for students on an individual basis. The idea being, this test has what's called universal design. And so a child, depending on the test, can ask for there to be highlighting options, American Sign Language. They can change the color choices, black on white, white on black, rose colored. There's an actual real educational reason why you would do that. There's text to speech. There is ways in which the test will load up. So the idea here is that teachers have been learning this to create the best testing environment for a student. Is this like a big question? Not a...
No, what is masking?
Masking is where, as you're looking at answers and you don't want to look at a particular answer anymore, you can actually say, okay, I don't want to look at that, so let me take that out of my visual area. Go ahead and hit select. It's going to say, is this your test? Yes, it is my test. So go ahead, yes, start my test. There's a sound check, which is, there's a sound check and then evaluate that information that they listened to. So they're not going to read it, they're going to listen to it and answer some DOK 3 questions based on what they heard. So that's why they have to do a sound check. You're going to say yes, hopefully that works. And now, finally, if you want to look through the instructions, you can begin your test. And so we're going to take a good 15 to 20 minutes to take this test, and then take questions and do some answers as best we can. So go ahead, and you are ready to take our next generation assessment. We'll come around and answer questions as we need to get you going. Okay.
All right, we're going to shift right quick. I'm going to give this back to Ingrid in a second. But several people said, I want to know if I got it right. And I said, wow, you guys are worse than the kids. So I'm going to show you, or the teachers who also were like, the teachers are typing. I'm like, no, it's okay. So if you look at these pink squares, if you go back to ACOE Core Learning, you can also find this if you're a really good clicker on the Smarter Balance site. But if you look here, we have this right under the test portal. We have something called the Practice Test Resources. What do you think that's code for? The answer. So if you click on the resources, wink, wink, well, that's what they call it. You can scroll down and see, this is called the classroom activities. When they do the other part of the test, which we didn't look at today, the second half called the performance task, which is what we would kind of consider like an essay part of the test, the teachers actually do a little, so if you want to look at that yourself, the teachers actually do a sort of schema building, like a background building for all kids before they go take that test, and that's what these activities are. And then when you come down here, here are your scoring guides for the different tests, math performance tasks, etc. Okay? So you can click on, go straight down, all different grades, English and math. So if you want to know if you got it right, you can. Yes?
Where is this, the flag sign, if you click on it, it shows, what does it mean?
The flag, if you click on it, you're right.
All right, we'll start taking questions. So the flag icon is for a student to flag a question that they want to go back to. So when you get ready to move on, it'll actually show the questions, the first batch of questions, say 1 through 6. And it'll say that you have a flag icon. Do you want to go back and look at these before you submit the answer? Now that's really important because this test is adaptive. So once you submit, say, the first 7 questions, the computer then looks at your answers, sees that you got them right or got them wrong, and then picks, based on whether you got it right or wrong, the next batch of questions. So depending on if you got them all wrong, you might get one particular batch, and if you get them all right, you'll get another particular batch. So that flagging, you want to be able to go and look at them, double check, and then hit submit. Once you hit submit, you don't get to get those 7 questions. And it's not necessarily 7, but you don't get to go back to that first batch of questions. So we'll start taking some Q&A now. We have until about 8:30, so do whatever's your heart's desire. Yes?
So, first of all, will they have a pen and paper that they can use to work with this?
Great question. They are able to, okay, the question is, will they have paper and pencil along when they take the test? You can, you are allowed to. That will not be scored, that will not be turned in. So essentially, it's not at all part of seeing whether or not a student got it right or wrong. It's just for something that a student could use to work out a problem, but it does not get scored in any way.
Okay, and connected to that, the reason I asked is I was working on one of the math performance tasks, and there was a lot of kind of spatial stuff there, and I found it really cumbersome to try to put it all together. And then the other question related to that was I wasn't able to leave anything blank.
Yes, on this test, so the question is, are you able to leave any blanks? No. On this test, you have to answer every single question. That's the way they've designed it so far. That's the way the field test will work, and as I'm understanding, that's the way the test will work once we go live with it next year. Now, things are subject to change, but we will see. You know what, I'll have to look at the reasoning behind that. I think right now why you want a student to answer every question in a pilot in the field is you're trying to get enough data behind every single question because we're still testing the text. So you want as much of a response as you can get, because a wrong answer tells you a lot about a question as well, as a right answer. All right, I'm going to ping pong so I make sure I don't bias one side.
Question is, my kid is also in 5th grade, and the teacher said they will have a placement test before they go to 6th grade, and then in 6th grade beginning month again they will have a placement test. After looking at this, I don't get the idea of what is that placement test, and that advanced level and beginner, I mean, in 6th grade.
Good question, Jamie. You wanna? She's our curriculum instruction person.
So let me say, okay, in the past, in middle school in particular, if you were to look at the standards, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, right? There's a ton of overlap, and there's very little new things being introduced in the old standards. So kids who were, and there's a lot of memorization and just, do it. And so kids who were good at that could move very quickly, and it was very easy for people to like compress and say, we're going to do an accelerated 6th grade year or an accelerated 7th grade year, and just add some of the extra stuff in, and then you can go into algebra and be fine. And so we in California in particular are really used to that. So this is actually a California problem in that the way our standards in middle school were very weak, and so it was very easy to, as an instructor or as a parent, to look and say, my kid could do that in 1 year. And teachers were like, yeah, our sharp kids who know how to do this stuff can do those 2 years in 1 year and go right into algebra in 7th grade. Okay, great, so now we have this accelerated thing. Well, now Common Core and most of the other states that weren't saying algebra was an 8th grade course, so let's be clear about that, not all states had algebra as an 8th grade course, said, okay, well then, if a regular kid can do algebra in the 8th grade, my kid can do it in 7th grade, and so we made that acceleration for you. Well, now there's this 6th, 7th, 8th grade Common Core span of material that's actually much more rigorous. We actually have a document where I can show you how a lot of the old California algebra has actually trickled all the way down into 6th grade. And they've added this whole statistics sort of package that didn't used to be there, and data analysis and building functions, and even in Algebra 1, there's now Algebra 2 stuff in there, quadratic and linear equations together, things that they didn't used to do to Algebra 2. So if you really look at the 6th, 7th, 8th Common Core progression now, there's really not anything you can leave out. You can't skip a grade, in my humble opinion, and do well. Let's just say that. Now, if you're going to like make your kids study all the 7th grade stuff at home while they're doing all the 6th grade stuff and then take a test to go fast, well, you knock yourself out. So if I were going to give someone, so there's that. So now they said, well, but my kid still needs to be accelerated, be special. Okay, so what are we going to do? I know what we'll do. We'll cram the 6th, 7th, 8th grade Common Core material, 3 years, into 2 years. So we won't just do 2 for 1. We'll say you'll take in, let's say 6th grade, you'll take all of 6 and half of 7, and then in 7th grade you'll take that other half of 7, whatever that is there, and then all of, 8th, and then you'll be ready to do algebra ahead of everyone else in the 8th grade, right? So we're just going to cram all this stuff down your throat, and everything will be fine. So there's a lot of parent pressure on districts to continue the My Special Child Acceleration module, because when you look at the Common Core says 9th grade is Math 1 or Algebra, 2 Geometry, 3 Algebra 2. And you're saying, wait a minute, where's my kid getting to Calculus BC? How's my kid getting to Calculus BC? I need pre-calculus for Calculus A and Calculus BC in junior and senior year to keep up that accelerated rate that we've been sending kids to school with. So parents are like, my kid needs to accelerate now. And so that's what you have. Now, in my humble opinion, when you look at the math and how it's laid out, the place to accelerate is in high school. So you take a kid who's already doing well, you give them the foundation in 6th, 7th, 8th grade really strongly, and then you can do the same kind of thing, where, and depending on what you're going to do, there's 2 pathways in high school now, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, which is silly, and we should stop doing it, but that's another story. Or you can do what you should be doing, and what we do K through 8, which is an integrated approach.
right? Why do we do an integrated approach? If you look at the 6th, 7th, 8th grade standards, all the way down to 5th grade, kids are doing geometry and data analysis and algebra thinking together. Because this is how you think about math. Anybody who does math knows that. So, but we stopped that in high school because there's a lot of reasons. I mean, imagine teachers are like, what? And everything else, and you're used to what it is, and it should stay the way it is in high school. So what they should do is math 1, 2, 3, and then when you look at math 1, 2, 3, if you were doing it like that, in the 3rd year, those sharp kids could easily do what pieces that they don't have right now, sort of pre-calculus stuff in there, really circle is what they need to do in that 3rd year. And then they could theoretically cram that in that 3rd year, which would be their junior year, which is another thing people don't like, is in your junior year, taking all your AP courses, You know, they're all stressed out, but I'm like, well, either they can do it or they can't. And then they can take their calculus BC as a senior. Yes, this is a very big, knotty problem. So, but you asked, so I'm going to tell you, because I don't work here.
Well, and I think that piece, like a very quick answer to the placement part of your question,
I have no idea what people
is that what you're hearing is you actually have to fundamentally rethink the course sequence and then figure out the placement test. You don't start with the placement, you actually think through the fundamental course sequence of what you're going to land on. And a lot of districts right now are having that conversation.
And
it's a big conversation.
And hopefully that placement test. Sorry.
We have other
I know, and just hope, well, this is a big one. And hopefully that placement test shows basically not what you've already learned, because hopefully they're going to just make you go faster, but that you have been a fast learner all along, that you have a great aptitude for math, and that there's some really interesting problem-solving stuff to see how kids approach problem-solving and how much perseverance they have, and do they stick with problems or do they get frustrated? Because in the old days, and I'm going to tell you this because my stepson was Mr. Memorizer. That kid memorized his way all the way to geometry and then blew up because he can't memorize proofs. And so we're now doing a different paradigm of math. It's not about memorizing algorithms. It's really about conceptual understanding. And so that's the kind I would look for that in a test, is where is that perseverance, that problem solving, that creative thinking, how long do kids stick with it? And then those are those kinds of kids who love that stuff and they're just deep into it. Like that young man over there told me he loved to read and he loved the test and he thought it was delightful. If you have a kid who's like, that's it, I love this is so cool, I can't wait, I want to do this all the time, then they probably could do an accelerated course. But I'd be a little careful.
Other questions?
Hopefully not for me.
Next slide. We good?
Oh, come on. They're like, just let me go home. Okay, yeah.
I like the emphasis of the new standard on the critical thinking part, but I have concern that our current teachers didn't go through the system, so there might be a transitional period that kids have conflict with the teacher, right? Because they came from different backgrounds. So I'm just wondering that the school district, what are the steps you're taking to making the transition period smoother?
So he can probably answer that, but what I will tell you is I just spoke to this young child a little while ago who said he took the test and he felt it was pretty good and he wants to come up here and say that. And then I asked him, I said, well, but have you been doing things like this test this year? And he said, yes. And I said, is that different than what your teacher was doing last year? He actually said, yes. So what I will say is that young children, as you know, are very, very flexible, right? And that's why this year you're not getting any data back. This is a no data year. You're not going to get to say, oh, the teacher didn't do a good job, oh, your student didn't study hard enough. This is a practice year. And just like that, teachers are practicing in the classroom. And they're creating their own assessments and they're looking at how well they da-da-da-da. And next year they'll have the formative items from the Smarter Balance. They'll be using those, and those are aligned to the assessment, and they'll know how to adjust their instruction. So you're right. You should all be loving to your teachers and know that if something doesn't work, that's okay because that means they're trying something new. And so yes, absolutely, love, patience, and happiness. And then I think Odie can tell you more specifically about what exactly they've been doing in Pleasanton because they've been doing a lot of professional development work around this. So take it away, sir.
I want to thank Jamie and Ingrid for an outstanding presentation tonight. And for those parents whom I've not met and guardians, my name is O.D. Douglas, and I serve as your Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. So I have the pleasure of serving all of your children. And on behalf of our Superintendent Amati and our Board of Education, we're very pleased that you've made a commitment to be with us on this evening. And we have been doing a lot of work towards fully implementing the Common Core state standards in Pleasanton. So we're doing a lot of training with our teachers, a lot of training with our administrators, so we want to make sure that we're ready, and we have a lot of bright young people. So we're very excited about that. And in terms of mathematics, Ms. Marin did a phenomenal job of sharing with you the process. Here in Pleasanton, because we are special, we will still have the accelerated pathway for parents who want their children to do geometry in 8th grade. We're doing assessments now. She explained it beautifully. We're doing them now, and I believe for our 5th graders, and to see exactly where they're placed so parents can have informed decisions. And we know that all the content must be covered. It's going to require a very special child to be able to do that, and some very special teachers that we have. But we know our parents want to have that option available. So we will have that option available for our parent community. So I just wanted to share that, but she definitely explained the level of statistics and data analysis is much more in depth than ever before. But we will have that available for our parents, and we'll make sure that you know whether or not your child can handle the level of rigor through the assessments that we will be sharing with you, and you will be able to make some informed decisions. So that option will still be available here in Pleasanton, because based upon the pathway that we have now, we have a significant number of our young people who do exceptionally well in what we're calling geometry today. And so we want to continue to provide that option for our parent community and their children, but we want to make sure you understand that we are going to be fully implementing the Common Core state standards as well. And we'll share with you what those look like. So our staff has been working very hard, and we know it's going to be a very challenging opportunity, but we're looking forward to it. And we're learning a lot through the experience. But we really appreciate your commitment of being here tonight, and we thank TV30 for being with us, and Alameda County Office of Education, Mr. Grasco. So you all are on candid camera tonight. And so we'll have this available for you to look at on our website, and TV30 will also have it available. And we thank Derek for being with us, our technician, and we also have Mrs. Hayes, our coordinator for special projects, who's here with us this evening. So we have a lot of people here. We're here we want to respect the time, but we definitely want you to have access to the information so that you can be informed. And our goal is to do much more parent outreach to make sure you are aware. So we'll have more hands-on information nights in mathematics as well, English language arts, and college and career readiness. So our goal, you'll be hearing more about this through our communications, that we'll have many more forums for parents to come and get information about what our children are learning in our schools. So we definitely, again, thank you for your time and your questions. And if you have any additional questions, we'll be here tonight for you. And also, if you borrow Chromebooks for us, we need them for our children.
Oh, they're not purchases?
We would have loved to have been able to do that, but we're not able to do so. So we would like to give our presenters a round of applause. Dr. Wilson, Mr. Lynn, thank you for being with us tonight and being a partner with us in Alameda County. But we would like for your Chromebooks to be returned to us for our children to use on tomorrow. Again, thank you for being with us this evening.